Okay, welcome back to the Trump Show. We're here once again to give honor to Baba Trump. Today, we'll jump straight into it. We're going to jump into the fact that since Trump has got into office, it seems like we're going to keep our fingers crossed that all the wars are dwindling down. So, Kule, my point is that whether we can give credit to Trump or not, there's a ceasefire in Israel. People aren't getting killed. Definitely, the war between Russia and America. I was not. It's really Russia and Ukraine, but it's really the war between Russia and America is over. That's definitely over. I don't know if the ceasefire is over. And so my argument is that if you're a humanist, you should be happy that Trump beat Biden because Trump beating Biden ushers in an era in which we'll still have problems, but maybe, just maybe, there'll be a reduction in the conflicts. We have to keep our fingers crossed about Iran also. What do you think? Yeah.
Well, there's still heavy fighting in the Ukraine. I want to start off with Ukraine.
Oh yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
still a lot of heavy fighting. And also, the Western countries, even without the help of America, still plan to continue sending weapons to Ukraine. So it may not, and it's in the personnel, so long as I don't know how that's going to affect the war, whether it's going to mean that Ukraine won't be able to hold out anymore, and they'll lose. I think is it the Odessa, that southern
Oh,
eastern
yeah, they're going to
region.
lose Odessa. Odessa is part of Ukraine, but it's going to. I have a
Yes.
feeling they're going to lose Odessa, and they deserve to lose it because they tried to take back. What's the other part that Russia has? Uh, Not Odessa. There's the other part that they tried to take. Yeah, but continue. So I'll look it up. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's the northern part of the
Crimea.
northeast of
Ukraine
Crimea.
had the nerve.
That's it. Where the
Ukraine
oil
had the nerve to
fields.
say they had the nerve to say that we want Russia to end the war and give us Crimea. Russia said no, we won't end the war and we'll take Odessa. And if you're not careful, we'll take Kiev. Like they like to say Kiev, but I say Kiev. So
Yeah.
yeah. But
So
also before
that's
we
it.
go back to you, I do think that the war will continue because weapons manufacturers want it to continue, but it will be a low grade war in which it's just sales of weapons, but you won't see like a lot of human cost of life. What do you think? Yeah. In other
Well,
words, it's just 419. They want to keep selling weapons to Ukraine, so the war has to continue in name, but it's definitely going to wind down. Sorry, continue. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, there is a culture of trying to create this axis of evil between China, Russia, and Iran. And there is the culture in the West, as you can see, they're moving towards the far right. They're trying to generate that hate culture towards global countries. They're trying to do that so that when war does come, they'll be able to mobilize. I think that they're ramping themselves up for a war. And when you do that,
yeah,
you need a lot of hate far right rhetoric in your government. And I think it's not so much directed at the global South, but I think that that fight in Ukraine um, could could become something if the Western European countries are so fully committed to it that even without the US, they still do remain a formidable foe, even without America. And they are still getting their weapons from America and they're simply donating them to the Ukraine to continue the fight. So, in respect of Trump trying to bring some kind of resolution to that, we may have to see how that plays out because also there
yeah.
will be a limit to what he can and cannot do. He may want to do something and then the government might step in and not align to ratify certain things he wants to do regarding
Yeah.
foreign policy.
Also, what could happen is now that Trump is in office, I think he definitely will reduce American funding for Ukraine. So what will happen is whoever was funding Ukraine when Biden's in office, it'll just be private companies continue to fund it around Trump's back. And then Trump will say, okay, I don't care as long as it's not my money or it's not America's money. So what will happen is foreign corporations, I mean American corporations will now continue selling weapons to Ukraine and find ways to get bank in America. So this goes to show you the divide. There's two states in America. There's the deep state and there's the official leaders. So it looks like Trump is the official leader of the country now. But the deep state, even though they no longer have their people in office like Biden, they can still use banking to fund the war. That's not even against America's constitution because a private company can fund a war in Europe against Russia, and it's not a conflict to America. What do you think? I think that's what's going to
Yeah,
happen. Yeah,
yes, I think so. I agree with you there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
these isolationist policies that America is going into, both domestically and regarding foreign affairs, is creating a strength around, growing strength around BRICS. BRICS, I think, is beginning to gather pace now.
Oh yeah.
And it's
Well, we
going
know
to change
Nigeria
the
is now a partner. Yeah,
yes, it's going to change the political landscape. rather quickly. I don't really know what it's going to be. We can all take our guesses, but I do believe that the nature of the UN is going to be the institution that's going to suffer the most. The ICC and the ICJ stands actually separate from the UN, and because they've been prosecuted friend or foe, they may survive. I mean, seeing as how they've gone after Netanyahu as well as the Taliban, although I
Yeah,
think it's disingenuous going after the Taliban. They are
it's just
former
poetic. It's
allies of
poetic.
America.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, and it was without America, there would have been no Taliban. We must never forget that because without America, they could have never been out.
Oh yeah, and we
Um,
have to go back to our history lesson because the U.S. funded the Taliban to fight and destabilize Russia. This is the same thing they're doing, or the Soviet Union, same thing they're doing with Ukraine. They're funding them to destabilize uh, Russia, and we all know that this is because a strong Russia and a strong China equals a strong global south because those countries will do trade. And what America wants is to get China and Russia out of the picture so they can continue to treat African countries as their own property, killing their citizens and just taking their mining, especially places like Congo. What do you think? Yeah. So
yes,
in order for them to
especially
do that, they have to get rid of China and Russia because China and Russia are sort of like our last hope as far as getting us out of the imperialism that Britain and America have brought to the world. Yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
yes, China and Russia are also big economies. Donald Trump has a very contradictory stance with China. One minute they're his best friend, the next minute they're his biggest enemy.
Yeah, it's very complex.
You know, very, very, very confusing. He sends a lot of mixed messages
But
regarding
I like that,
China.
Kool-Aid. That's kind of like my relationship with my wife. You know, that's real like reality. Go ahead.
Yeah,
You
but
get what I'm saying?
yeah. Although
Okay,
his
go ahead.
relationship with Russia is significantly better than his relationship
Oh yeah,
than
China. China's the
Biden.
main enemy. Yeah,
Yes,
and we
China
have to
is the
remember that
main.
when Putin, sorry to cut in front of you, when Putin first came into power, he was actually friends with America and said, "I want to be friends with you guys," but guys like Biden and Obama and co weren't having it. You get my point? So if it forced
Yes,
Putin to now move towards China because he's like, okay, I want
yes,
to be part of, because he wanted to be part of NATO, and then the Americans turned their nose up and they said, no, you can only be part of NATO if you're a junior member and we can have all of Russia's resources, which is what America wanted to do. That's why they tore down the wall and brought in Yeltsin and Gorbachev because those guys were saying yes, yes to America. But when Putin came, he said, I'm not saying yes, yes to you. I'm saying let's be partners. America doesn't want that, and that might be a fatal mistake because you have to America has to treat Russia and China as its equals because they are at the same level. You get my boy? They're all big boys. What do you think, Kunle? Sorry. Yeah, yeah,
yes, yes. So, yeah, I agree with what you're saying on that as well. In
yeah.
respect of Russia and China, so that's where we stand on that. On that area, then we look at the other side of the world, where we look at the other conflicts that they're dealing with regarding Palestine. And I saw that Trump is pardoning the settlers that are instituting
Yeah.
violence there
Hmm.
in order to show a support for Israel. And we're going to see whether he's going to continue to arm them when the ceasefire ends, because we've had a ceasefire over Christmas before, and immediately the time went out, they went straight back to war.
Yeah, and
So
also Israel hasn't actually honored it yet. They keep extending the time that they'll take their troops out. So maybe after all their hostages are released, they'll renege. You get my point? Yeah, yeah.
yes, I expect them to renege. I expect the violence to come back. I expect them to go back inside there. Once the hostages are out, then there'll be nobody that will stop Netanyahu from completing his genocide. Uh,
Yeah, and I'm
and
hoping.
there's no military force. You see, the problem is there's the only way you can stop it is by military force. And if there's no military force in the region that's strong enough to stop it, then it's going to happen. It's that
Okay,
simple.
but here's the problem. So, Kunle, here's the problem. So, like when Russia, we all know that Russia initiated the attack on Ukraine, but I think they were partly justified. I'm going to say that the Ukraine-Russia war is the fault of both countries. Russia stepped into the Donbass to protect the Russian part of Ukraine, but as soon as that happened, as soon as Russia attacked Ukraine, Westerners stood up for Ukraine. American people put pressure on their government. And they even used the word, these are people who look like us. They're blonde and they're Christians. And they stood up for it and said, we have to fight Russia. But now, when if like as you say, if they now start killing Palestinians again, you said it's up to Palestine to have a military. But it's very sad that the world the Western world doesn't shut down its governments to stop a genocide there, but they'll do it to stop a so-called genocide in Ukraine because they like Ukrainians. And this goes back to the war with the war that was in Yugoslavia when they and the Serbs and everything. White people stopped that war because they care about white people. You understand what I'm saying? So it seems like when there's a war in which white people are dying, it's the solution is always non-military. Civilians from countries where white people are say this is an outrage, but I don't see them doing the same thing about what's going on with Palestine. You see what I'm saying? Yeah,
I
yeah,
see what you're saying.
yeah,
Palestine is also a region that has massive gas deposits. The Middle East in general is where
yeah,
most of the world's oil is. So all these conflicts in the Middle East, I mean, the Western governments will try to sell it to you as Muslim countries are aggressive, but in
yeah,
reality, all it is Western countries just trying to take oil and resources and then
yeah. And
demonize the
Palestine is a
that
strategical
country.
location for them. Yeah.
Yes, to keep the Western
But I guess what my
population.
argument is, here's my argument. Let's say that the US said, oh, yeah, let's attack Denmark because they have oil. Westerners will be like, no, resources aren't important because the people from Denmark are human beings. You understand what I'm saying? So it seems like white supremacy is not willing to destroy whites in order. So, in other words, American people will not allow us to destroy Great Britain and those countries for America because they are white, but they don't mind us doing it to Congo and Palestine. Do you get the point I'm making? Yeah, yeah,
Yes, I do get the point
yeah,
you're
yeah,
making
yeah.
there. I mean, we've seen it when Lindsey Graham threatened Canada, France, Britain,
And everybody's
and
mad.
said that
Even
all of them
Lerato
is
is
going
mad. How
to
can
attack the
America
ICC.
attack Canada? Story.
Yes, he
Let me
said
delete
if
that
you
part because
attack the
Lerato will be watching the
ICC,
show.
I'm going, Lorato, that if you attack the ICC, that he's going to come for you.
But if you say
So
you attack Mexico, Americans are cool with it. But if you say Canada, not because Mexicans are darker than Canadians. You get my point? Yeah.
yes, I think what's trending right now in America right now, this moment
Gulf of America.
is the throwing out of the ice. I think they're rounding up people and putting them on
Yeah,
military
yeah,
posts.
yeah,
Apparently,
yeah.
that's what they're saying. I don't know what's true and
Okay, let me
what's
give you the angle,
propaganda
Kunle.
is.
So under Biden's regime and under Obama's regime, there were actually more people deported than under Trump. So what's happening now is that it's the same deportation that was taking place under Biden, but Trump is now taking credit for it and highlighting it to make it look to please his right wing people. But it's been going on. It's just that now that Trump's in office, he's highlighting it. You understand what I'm saying? He's like, yeah, we're deporting people, but they were deporting people even before the change of power.
Yes,
But Trump
I remember hearing that Obama's time
yeah,
was
but
actually
no,
the
Trump is taking
largest number
ownership
of
of it. So
deportations.
Obama and Biden were too embarrassed and ashamed to say they were doing it, but Trump is doing it because he wants to show that he's following through with his promises.
It's sort of those kind of funny things, sort of like the way in British politics you have the Conservative and Labour Party, and both of them are always arguing that they're the ones that started the NHS, and it's like they're both claiming that
Yeah,
yeah. So that's a similar type of thing there, but it's
yeah.
just an analogy. But yes,
But I do think
um,
that. Okay, go ahead. Continue with your thought.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Go on. What are you going to say?
I think we're too sober because this show is serious. Now, let me stop. Let me stop. Let me stop. So the point I wanted to make was that it's not Trump. I think the world cannot contain this Palestinian and Middle East crisis because if it gets out of control and if the US goes to war with Iran or if Israel goes to war with Iran, the price of oil will increase and then people in Britain and in America will die because it'll just be fuel will be too expensive and you won't be able to heat your homes, you won't be able to buy food. So I think what's happening is that out of necessity, America will back off from being an imperial country, not because they're nice people, but because that model isn't working anymore. And the BRICS model makes more sense, in which you leverage your resources and you compete against other countries, but you don't have to. Competition is better. Competing with trade is better than war because the Western economy can't keep funding wars. For example, the US spends more on military than China, Russia, India, and 10 other countries combined. And if they keep doing that, then those countries will beat them because they will implode within because they're spending too much on war. So I think the world might become less violent for a little while because that model will not help America. It'll be just like me telling my son, I'm buying 5,000 guns so I can beat your family, Kunle. And my son would be like, yeah, but now we can't even buy rice to eat because you're spending too much money on guns. So I think that out of natural market forces, we're going to have an era in which there'll be a little reduction in violence for a little while because it's not economically plausible for Western nations. What do you think? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they call guns and butter economics.
Yeah,
But
yeah. It's not going to work. Guns is not going to work anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, guns is not going to work anymore
And it's
because
not going to help. It's not going to help the gun owner because he'll have guns, but he won't have bread. Go ahead. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
there's a prosperity culture that Russia believes that whether it's true or not, Russia believes that everybody can be rich together
Oh
under
yeah.
their system.
No, I think it's true because if you
Whereas,
look at Russia, they're eating well and they're still providing enough food to feed the
yeah,
world. So even if their
yes,
money is weaker than the US dollar, it doesn't matter because they're feeding each other. Continue, sorry. Yeah.
exactly. Whereas Western nations believe that they must be taking advantage and there must be subject countries that are suffering and that
That's
are called
narcissism.
shithole
It's
countries
narcissism.
who
Yeah.
have inferior human beings who are less worthy of life and who are less competent, less intelligent, and of a lower general demeaning than them. And they sell that culture to their people, and anybody that stays in that system, that's global south, will be subject to that.
But
That's why
Kula, you
they
know what
really
that
want to
means?
be part of
It
that
means that
anyway.
Americans and Westerners are insecure. And in order to feel secure, they have to be white supremacists. So my argument is that Russia says everything there for our country. We get bread, we get food. We don't need to prove anything because we know we're great. We don't need to beat other countries to prove we're great. That's the way I look at it. Yeah, continue. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also aware, I'm not going after the American people. I'm aware that governments can be very disengaged from their people. I mean, the fact that I'm
Yeah,
criticizing
yeah.
American government don't mean American people are bad. I mean, I criticize Nigerian government even more. Doesn't mean Nigerian people are bad either.
But
These
Kula,
systems
I have to
have,
disagree with you a little bit because the Americans were outraged. They were even giving money to Ukraine when they saw that a white country was being attacked. But they're not
they're being
outraged.
propagandized. They don't really know. There's black people giving money to Ukraine. They didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, but I
There's
don't think
black
they
people
care. So I
hanging
think that
flags, you
I
know.
agree with you, but I think
Um,
that in general, black Americans and white Americans are anti-black. So I think that even in America, black Americans feel they're better than Nigerians because they're Americans. That means that they're saying that our master is more powerful than Nigeria. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, that's the Buffalo Star, the Buffalo
Yeah.
Soldier,
Yeah.
the Buffalo
So I
Soldier.
agree with you, but I think that Americans are propagandized, but I think there's a general level of narcissism and brutality, which tends to spill over to the citizens too. Like every American, I don't own a gun, but I have friends who own guns and show me the guns and brag about it. That's a very violent, machoistic culture that we need to move away from. Even Tupac, remember Tupac? That's why I fucked your bitch, and Tupac says I'm gonna die. So it seems like Americans in America, it's considered honorable to die in a gunfight. So it seems like Americans are very violent. But I'm going off track. What do you think? Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
where did the gun violence come from? It came from drug violence. Where did drug violence come from? It came from the CIA. It
But
took
I would
money
argue that
back
it
from
came
the
from
streets
before
and
that.
black
America was.
communities.
So my argument
Because
is
I
that
remember
America.
Candace Owens always saying that people were doing better before
Yeah.
segregation.
So
But she
I agree
doesn't
with you,
point
Kunle.
out the fact that after segregation, shortly thereafter,
Kunle,
they
I
had
agree with you
the
in that
drug campaign,
I
the
agree with
crack
you that
era.
the gun campaign has made it worse. But America was founded by white settlers. When white settlers came to America, they owned guns and they killed Indians. And then they realized that it's because of guns that we have power. So it became an honorable thing. Same thing with their slaves. Their slaves say, oh, yo, master got a gun. I got a gun too. So I think it goes before the new revolution of gun violence. I think that America was built on violence and genocide and slavery. So I think that Americans have a deep-seated need to have guns, and the gun industry is feeding off of their need. So it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I'm agreeing with you, but I think it's complex. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I understand with the gun violence issue, but the gun violence issue, I also believe, is closely related also to the drug issue, which is thanks to the CIA, which is actually what has actually
Yeah, yeah,
kept
yeah.
Africans down, Black Americans down in America.
I think
Because if
so.
there
So
hadn't been
sorry to
that
cut in
crack
front of you. I think that
epidemic,
the drug. So sorry to cut in front of you, but and I'll let you go from here. I think the drug issue exacerbated a pre-existing problem, but made it 10 times worse. Continue. Yeah, yeah.
yes, had there been no crack epidemic, I can quite assure you that the way that a Black American society developed
Oh, it's born
in
down.
the 70s and
So
now
you
would have
remember
been
my mom? My
completely
mom
different.
marched. She marched and was the first black person to go to the white schools in Virginia. And there was culture. When I was growing up, I had black aunties in the church. My grandfather told me, boy, you better work hard. If you don't work hard, you're a piece of shit. You better, because my granddad was a plumber. But now we see that when you go to black neighborhoods, it's their elders are drug dealers. And I don't blame the drug dealers because that's the only economy they have. Sorry, continue. So what
Yes,
happened is
that
that
was
the cocaine industry turned the black culture and even its music and hip hop into violence and misogyny because that's the only way they can make money. And that goes back to your argument about drugs, which Reagan brought into America, Reagan and George Bush. Sorry, continue. Yeah.
Yes, that was what the CIA brought into the
Yeah.
US because
And
at the
we
time,
also have to remember that the CIA was run by George Bush, who killed Lumumba and other people. Then when he became vice president, he caused the drug trade in America. Thank you. Continue.
yeah,
Yeah.
you see, and also at the time in the '60s when when they had just reached the civil rights, when black people had just achieved civil rights, they were now reached a certain level where they were now going to take it up a notch. Just at that point was when the drug
Yeah,
crisis came into
and sorry,
America.
one more interruption.
Crushed it.
At that point, Martin Luther King got civil rights, and then Martin Luther King said, "We're not worried about civil rights anymore. We're worried about the war in Vietnam, and we're worried about violence." And that's when Martin Luther King became a pariah in America, and the CIA also had him killed. I'm just
Yes,
linking to what you're saying. Continue. Yeah.
yeah, so it was when that was crushed, and then it now created this era where even in England they had something called the sus law. In America, I don't know what they had, but then they were able to use this drug epidemic to crack down on the black American male, and then they started incarcerating all their men. And when
Yeah,
you
from
incarcerate all your
200,000
men,
black men in jail to 3
your
million within a
generations
couple of
are
years.
being raised without fathers, and those generations being raised without fathers become delinquent, and then it becomes an ongoing, and it just becomes worse and worse, and then your society becomes degenerate and easy to subdue, and that's what that
And then the white people will
campaign
say,
did.
and then the white people will say, see how barbaric blacks are. But no, whites were. I'm not trying to talk bad about anything. When there was, remember when they illegalized alcohol in America in the 1910s? It was the white people who were the gangsters. Capone, all those guys killing people. They were behaving the same way black people were behaving. And this points to what you're saying. The alcohol movement in the 1920s turned white people into criminals, and now the drug movement has turned black people into criminals. So thank you for connecting it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the black people, even though they are in that drug campaign, they are at the lower level. They are retail level. They are not at the
Oh,
top
no, they're
level.
not the real boss. The real boss is the president. I'm serious.
Yes,
Because
they're
drugs
not
get
at the
into
top
America
level.
through cooperation with politicians and banks. Yeah.
Yeah, so that should tell you if they're not at the top level, that you tell you that it's being used to control that population. That's how I feel. Because I can see
No,
the
no, you're
difference.
right. I agree with you.
When you see an
But it's
African and you
also
see a black American
it's
from
two
above,
tiered.
both
It,
humble, then you
it's
can
two
see the
tiered.
difference.
It's two
Yes,
tiered. You get to
yeah,
control the black population and keep them down, but also from a non-racist perspective, you also get to make money off of selling cocaine. So you're
yeah.
killing two birds with one stone, destroying the black community and also making money off of cocaine. But now it's coming back on them because white Americans are dying from fentanyl, which is coming in from Mexico, and that's why now they want to close the borders. But when it was only black on black violence, they didn't want to close the borders. Sorry, continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's the culture. You know, if you see a poor black in Africa, you see poor black African kids whose parents can't pay their school fees trying to break into school and secretly get in there so they can get an education. That's the culture if of a poor black African, which is different from a
Yeah,
poor
it's
black
upward. It's
American
progressive.
who
Progressive.
wants to get away from school because he thinks he can't do anything for him.
Oh, you
So,
mean the
so
American one? The American,
there's a
yeah.
different, yeah, because they've not suffered that drug,
Actually, let me give you an
that
example. When
drug,
I was in college in America, I would talk to
yeah,
black girls. So I'll give you an example. When I was in college in America, I'll talk to black girls and I'll be reading poetry and writing books. So that motherfucker reading books, he a piece of shit. He ain't a gangster on the street. But when I went to Nigeria and South Africa and I told people I'm a philosopher, he's a philosopher, professor, professor. So in Africa, when you read, they call you professor. In America, when you're black and you read, they call you gay.
yeah.
I'm serious. I'm serious. I'm
It's
serious.
quite sad. It's the result of a lot of oppression, and they need to snap out of it and come out of it and become part of the Pan African movement. I don't like to denigrate on them. I feel sad
No,
when
no,
I
no.
see,
It's not them because let me tell you,
yeah,
even Africans treat African Americans wrong too. They say, "Oh, you're a slave. You're this." This is what
which
the
is
white
also
people want.
sad,
They want us to fight each other. It's the same problem with Nigeria and South Africa.
which is
My
really
mother is
sad.
Black American and my dad is Nigerian. I can say the bad parts of both cultures, and I
Yes,
realize we
we
need to
need to
become.
find more that we identify with and more that
Yeah,
separates us. You can find
yeah.
a million reasons why you want to be separate from people. You can
No,
find a
let me tell
million
you
reasons
something.
why you want to
We have
unite.
the same. We
It's
have the same music, and I will always
yes,
argue
it's the
Nigerian culture is
orientation.
actually Nigerian
Where
culture
do
is
you want to
actually
go?
matriarchal. It's matriarchal. We're Yoruba. We know Yoruba culture is dominated by women. When you go to a wedding, who controls the jollof rice? Is the old woman.
Uh-huh.
You
Well,
know,
in my house,
no, no.
I'm
What
the
I'm trying to say
jollof
is that
rice man,
Yoruba
sir.
culture is very matriarchal. African American culture is matriarchal too. The grandma has more respect than the male because she's working hard. So what we need to do is find our common. We're not like the Europeans. We have a different value. We have good music. We have good culture. African America has good music, good culture, good food. But this drug issue in America has caused problems, and also the colonial issue in Nigeria has caused problems. Where in Nigeria now, you can't even tell your friends you're in the country because you're worried that they may have you kidnapped for money. These are economic pressures that are turning us into criminals. What do you think, Kunle? Yeah, yeah.
Yes, the kidnapping era is also very sad. There's been a spate of kidnappings going on in Nigeria that have been coming up on the radio over the last few days. I heard a couple of kidnappers were caught and killed. They tried to kidnap some celebrity or some well-known figures, and they were rescued. The kidnapping culture came in 2009 with the retaliation by the was it the East Port Harcourt area. I forgot their name, but Biafra related groups that were kidnapping, and
Biasa,
then
no,
it
is it
became
not Biafra boys or what do they call it?
yes, and then
Yeah,
it became a financial business.
yeah.
Once they knew how to do it and they saw how much money they could make, and now we're second only to Colombia, if not first.
Yeah,
And
and that shows the decline in Nigerian culture and values. Because back in the day in Nigeria, you say chop and let others chop, but it never got to the point where you just don't respect human life just because of money. That's
it
not
was
African. It's not African, but it's
kidnapping
becoming
was
African.
virtually yeah
Yeah.
kidnapping was virtually non-existent 15, 20 years ago. It was virtually non-existent. It's not something that we've been doing all along, even if though we're poor. It's something that's been learned through negative influences, and in this case
Well, I think I know the
it,
name, Bakassi Boys or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. And
Yeah.
and now we've had another negative external influence where we call Boko Haram that also came. Both of these things came around 10 to 15 years ago, almost collided, and just created new problems that we didn't have,
It's a
despite our
Western plan. Yeah, yeah.
other problems. Yes, despite the other problems that we have had. Now we need to find a way to support the francophone countries in the Western Sahel as they try to break away from Western
Yeah, we need to
control.
join them. Yeah.
We need to support them. I mean, we don't, I'm not saying we need to fight Western countries, but we need to gain your independence from them. We can't let them be coming into the countries and telling us you can do this or do that. Look at what
No.
they're telling Yemen. I'm going to bomb your country, Mr. Yemen, even though it's your land that we are using to pass through. I want to bomb it because I need my Amazon package to get
Who's
there
that?
on
Who's that?
time.
Who's that? Is that US or Nigeria?
That's the Houthis in the Yemen. I mean, I'm
Oh
talking
yeah,
about
but who's
independence
threatening
of
Houthis? Who's
government. But in
threatening the Houthis?
Nigeria, the analogy is northern Nigeria, where you have bases
Oh,
that
I
are
see
being,
what you're saying. Yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah. Yeah, because
so
so for example, Tinubu wanted to aggress Nigeria and them because he wants an oil link to the Mediterranean. Yeah, that's some bullshit. Yeah, we
yes,
can't
I
do that.
mean, it's
We
a
can't do
welcome
that
move.
anymore. Money's not more important than your grandmother, and Africa is our mother. So I'm using the analogy: Africa is our mother. Just like Kule, if somebody insults your dad, you'll fight them. But if they insult your mother, you'll kill them. So we have to look at when you attack Africa, where no matter where we are in Africa, it's like you're attacking our mother because we're the mother of the world and of creation, and we have to show some respect for our ancestors. What do you think? Yeah, I'm being serious. I'm
Yeah,
not joking
and
here. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
also think Donald Trump has showed that he despises Africa and all things
Oh
African.
yeah, yeah. Trust me, I got my Trump
And,
hat on, but
uh,
what Trump is doing, we need to look at what he's doing, and we need to have the same type of boldness that he has, and not care what people tell us. This liberal movement, like you always talk about with the LGBTQ and all that and stuff, is trying to tell us who we should be. And we're going to stand up to them, even if they call us bigots. We're not interested in gender politics or identity politics. We're interested in saving our children. You have children, and I have children, daughters and sons. We want to save them, and we also want to save the world. I want white people to do well too. I don't want to see Harry Kane not scoring goals. You see what I'm saying? Because he's a human being. You understand what I'm saying?
we're all
So
human beings. We're here for a good time, not a
yeah,
long
so I
time.
care about the world. And like you said, it's not that white people are evil or Americans, but their governments are pushing them down a road which is destroying human culture. Take take us out
Yes.
on that, Kunle.
And
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And the governments, not just of these Western countries, but even these
Also,
African
the African
governments
countries
as
ourselves.
well.
Yeah.
We also struggle with trying to make sure that we have ducks in a row. And
Yeah.
right now, clearly, we're trying to do that. And as much as we have a lot of negative things to say about the current government, Nigeria is developing in spite of, not because of,
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
spite
I
of. I
call
mean,
it
if
the
you come
forces
to
of
Nigeria
nature.
now, I don't know,
Yeah.
now we have rail that's beginning to grow, we're beginning, but there are the other things that we're regressing in. And there are things that were being frozen in time that we just can't develop because of the culture of corruption that we have.
Yeah.
We need to get past it at some point in the next
So
10
very
years.
quickly, yeah. So based on what you just said now, so now we know that Nigeria owes IMF and all these countries money, and we're attacking Tinubu because he doesn't want to subsidize oil. But now that they've joined BRICS, if Nigeria does the right thing and uses the development from joining BRICS, we can now pay off our other loans and also subsidize things. So now is the real test for Tinubu over the next 2 years or so to see that once we join BRICS, hey, how's it going? Things need to get better. Wouldn't you agree, Kunle? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. And as much as America is annoyed that they don't want to trade with Nigerian oil again, I do understand that burning light sweet crude is what they use for much of their fighter jets. It's the finest type of aviation and
Oh, and it
military
comes from
fuel,
Nigeria. Yeah,
and
yeah.
it comes from Nigeria. So, well, Trump doesn't like wars anyway. So, I mean, if he
Yeah,
doesn't
but
want
you
war,
know how
let us
Trump
go
is.
with Nigerian
You know what?
fuel.
Let me tell you what Trump is. Trump may not like Nigeria or Africa, but in the back room, he'll make a deal with them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because he's a businessman. Trump is a
Yeah, I
businessman.
don't think he's ever been to Africa. If he ever does decide to go, he might go to South Africa. That's the closest he might try
Trump will like Nigeria because I know he likes women. He'll like to go to a Balende. How much? How much? How much? And also, I
to.
think Trump will like Suya.
No, definitely. I know he won't like suya because of the pepper. He will turn
But you know
bright
what? You
red.
know what's funny? In America, actually, all the black guys in the hood they love Trump. They say Trump is a gangster like us. Trump was friends with the bad boys or all the rappers, Kanye West. You get my point? So
Yeah,
he's
Trump is a performer. He does.
he's a performer.
Some
He's
of
a great
these
performer.
guys they pretend to be something, but they're something else in private or in their real
Yeah,
lives,
yeah.
and it's all a performance. And
So
the
your little
world's
one is here. What's her name? Yeah.
Henrietta.
How's it going, Henrietta? Are you going to be the future lawyer too, or activist? She's going to be an
What do you
activist.
want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a doctor.
She wants to be a doctor.
You want to be rich? Oh, you want to be like your
She
grandma?
wants to be
Yeah,
a
your grandma.
doctor.
Grandma is a doctor too. Yeah. So
Yeah, grandma is a
your dad's
doctor.
mother is a doctor, so you'll be a doctor too. Okay. So yeah. So this has been a good show. So Kunle, take us out with your last thoughts. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a great show today. We're going to have many more shows on the Trump show. Everybody, Trump, Trump,
Trump.
Trump.
Also, we also have
And
some new shows coming up. The Tinubu show.
let's see what crazy thing he's going to bring up tomorrow, because I'm
Oh
sure the
yeah,
next
Trump is
crazy
helping
thing,
us because he's giving us good ratings. So we got to see
if
it.
not later on this evening.
All right, so Kunle, yeah, so I don't think I'll see you for Formula One because it'll be a little bit too late. But maybe
Yeah.
on Monday we'll do a show. Okay.
All right. Nice one.
All right, Henrietta. Good night. Good night. I
Good
know I'm
night.
taking Dad's
Henrietta,
attention
he
from
says
you.
good night.
Good night.
Good
Good night.
night.
I'll see you later on this year. I'll bring suya and biscuits and some other things. All right. Have a good one, Kunle. Very good show.
All right,
Okay.
man. Nice
Okay.
one. Good show. Great.
Okay.